Yes, first of all, corruption is an endemic in our society, so you can't really root out, but you can always reduce it, and also you can reduce it to a proportion that it is not so much conspicuous or visible and also it impedes the process of working in the government, and as politicians, they should not also be so much corrupted that these are being detested by the people, and the leadership loses the credibility. I think what people want that she should at least bring a reasonable level, reduce the corruption to a reasonable level, that it does not impede the process of governance as well as erode the credibility of the politicians. So I would not give much that she could reduce corruption to that extent, but this should be a starting point, and more sustainable institutions she should create. But immediate task will be how to reduce the prices and improve the standard of living of the people, and deliver a good education for the younger generation who voted for her so overwhelmingly. So this is indeed a tremendous challenge.
Dr. Khondker, is what we're hearing enough? Has Bangladesh come far enough? We're talking about a reduction in corruption, or a not visible corruption. Has the country, in terms of this last 2 years of emergency rule, has it come far enough?
I think in the last 2 years, Bangladesh has shown that it can, take appropriate measures to stem the tide of corruption, and even on the level of corruption. Because I have done some research on corruption, Bangladesh has been getting a very bad press internationally. I mean, of course, there is a high level of corruption, but to rank countries as number 1, number 2, I think is very, very problematic. It's one of the corrupt countries, that's all. And some of the corrupt practices can be contained, if not eliminated completely. And in the last 2 years, we have seen the establishment of a very credible anti-corruption commission, anti-corruption bureau, and the anti-corruption bureau has done remarkably well in terms of identifying, some of the sources of corruption and making a social movement out of the anti-corruption drive. Now, if the new administration can sustain that momentum of fighting corruption at all levels, I'm sure they'll be able to contain it, and it depends a lot on whether they continue with this very credible anti-corruption commission. The anti-corruption commission has received a lot of approval and a lot of audits from the people in general. So if they can continue with that anti-corruption commission, I'm sure they'll be able to contain. And fortunately, they have not, given nomination to some of the extremely corrupt members of their party, so that's a good sign. So I'm quite optimistic, and they have learned from the mistakes of the past administration that you cannot, fool everyone, and you cannot supervise a corrupt regime for indefinitely. People see through it and they vote against it. So I'm sure, these lessons would be learned by all the leaders concerned, and I'm quite optimistic, and I'm really, quite optimistic in terms of the turning around of the situation, from a gloomy situation to a more bright future, especially with the 31%, 32% young voters. They have invested in this election, and they want to see that things are turned around.
And picking up on that aspect of the youth, ultimately, Dr. Rahman, is it fresh faces and new generation figures that are needed in the political arena in Bangladesh to have a complete disconnection from what we've seen before it?
No, complete disconnection is not possible, but I think Bangladesh needs I think what I'm trying to say, that there should be continuity and change. You see, I think there should be continuity in terms of accelerating the process of economic development, which is the #1 priority of Bangladesh. Already the country suffered in the last 2 years, not only because of the non-representative character of the government, but also because of the disasters which affected the crops and other means of livelihood of the people. So I think the first challenge will be for this new government of Sheikh Hasina is how to restore or recover the economic downturn and to speed up economic development, and the productive process must go on, because this is a huge population of Bangladesh compared to the resources. I think this is a challenge for any country, but for Bangladesh leadership, this will be a daunting challenge in the future, that how to really cope with the livelihood of so many people in such a difficult world now. So this is one. The second, ordinary people voted for Sheikh Hasina because they thought she would change their fate a lot. And I think food scarcity, food security, it would be a #1 priority of Bangladesh. So I think she needs to really place an effective strategy to deal with the food security. So this is the #1 priority. And then for the younger generation, the education system in Bangladesh is in disarray. You see, the higher education is highly partisan and infected by politicization. So I think there must be depoliticization to an extent in the higher education and in the colleges and the schools. Otherwise, the quality education will be a dream in the distant dream for Bangladesh. So these are the two things which I could say.
I will have to interrupt there. We're out of time. I'd like to thank you for joining us, as well as Dr. Ataur Rahman joining us from Dhaka. Please check out the website presstv.com/programs to check out the whole archive of Four Corners programs, and why not email us at fourcorners@presstv.ir. We'd love to hear from you. Many thanks for joining me, Nargis Mobilavi, for this edition of Four Corners.